Case 10.
Yeah, I can take this one. So at low power, we're seeing a papule. Above it, the epidermis is the face. You can see vessels at low power, and then if you go a little higher power, you can see there's a lot of mixed inflammation, and the vessels are lined by plump endothelial cells.
Yeah, there's inflammation, and there's very plump endothelial cells. Look at those guys.
And there's also a lot of eosinophils in the inflammation.
Right here, and here, this part is a little bit out of focus. Let's see. That's a little better. EO, and big, juicy, large, kind of epithelioid-looking endothelial cells, right? Okay, so what do you want to call this, John?
This would be good for like a epithelioid hemangioma or like an angiolymphoid hyperplasia with eosinophils.
Exactly. Good. Yeah, so the WHO soft tissue says we should call these epithelioid hemangioma, which I agree, I like that name, but they should say that we should not use the term ALHE anymore. And as much as I love and respect the WHO and generally follow its rules, this is an area where as a derm path, I break the rule a little bit. I still will call these epithelioid hemangioma with parentheses ALHE, angiolymphoid hyperplasia with eosinophilia. They are probably, most of the things at least, are probably truly neoplasms, so not really hyperplasia, although some things in derm path that get called ALHE might actually be reactive things mimicking true epithelioid hemangioma. Like bug bites can sometimes get real juiced up vessels and other things. So it's probably a little of a mixed bag in derm, whereas in the deeper soft tissue, they usually are real neoplasms. This one, I think, is a real neoplasm. Oh, look, hobnailing again. Much juicier hobnail cells. These are good to know about, though, because they look scary sometimes. Because when the endothelial cells get this big, they look a lot bigger than a normal hemangioma, and they can sometimes be so plump that they pack and fill the vessel, and you might not actually be able to tell it's a vessel. Like here, you can't really see the lumen. There is a red cell right here, I promise. But it looks almost like a nest of epithelial cells, right? And it ranges from case to case. Some cases are very busy and cellular and vascular rich and have very little inflammation, actually. Sometimes there are no EOs. Almost always you'll find at least a few. But sometimes they're kind of sparse on the inflammation and sparse on the EOs. Other times they're so loaded with inflammation that at first glance you think it might be a lymph node or something. And only when you look closer do you see these vascular channels lined by the plump, juicy epithelioid endothelial cells. And, there's another entity in soft tissue pathology that sounds similar to this, but usually looks pretty different. It's called epithelioid hemangioendothelioma, EHE. Don't confuse that with this entity. Those are like intermediate malignant potential / malignant lesions and should not be confused with this. They are name-alikes. That entity does have a tendency to have vacuoles called blister cells, but a lot of different vascular lesions that have plump endothelial cells that are epithelioid will make vacuoles. The vacuoles are a little different here than the true blister cells, but see these vacuoles? Pretty common finding in epithelioid hemangioma. A little different from the blister cell vacuoles of epithelioid hemangiothelioma. I've got videos about that on my channel on YouTube and Kiko. You can go watch them. These can be, again, really cellular and packed together or kind of more sparse. They can vary a lot within the same lesion. Over here, this is a good example of, these are background vessels, probably not part of the tumor, just background dilated lymphatics or venous channels. This is a great comparison. Look at that. Screenshot that. This is like a normal dilated lymphatic or venous, thin venule. And this is a tumor vessel, right? With huge, plump endothelial cells. And these, about 50% of these have a molecular abnormality that's worth knowing about. Does anyone happen to know that for a bonus point? It's a little more advanced level, but so they tend to have fusions of FOS, F-O-S, or FOS-B, F-O-S-B, in about 50% or so of cases. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but in hard cases, if you find that fusion in a vascular thing that looks kind of like this, that's very supportive that that's what you're dealing with. So most of the time I don't need to do that testing, but in some occasional cases I've had to do it, particularly when these are like in bone, which they can be, or when they're really cellular, and I'm worrying about maybe something more nefarious and malignant, like an angiosarcoma. That's the time where molecular testing could be helpful. And even though these are benign, they do have a tendency to recur, and they can the kind of classic presentation is on the temple of a young adult, multiple violaceous papules or nodules kind of clustered together. And sometimes you can actually have them after trauma to the temple, and you can actually see them growing out of or even in the lumen of the temporal artery if you have a deeper sample. So it's really common actually to arise by the temple and have a history of trauma, and they can grow out of the vessel or in the vessel. They can be multifocal but still benign. But even though they're benign, they are actually, in a subset of cases, at least morbid, because they tend to grow back. And I've seen them grow back multiple times and become a management issue. I've had surgeons from other parts of the world contact me because they saw one of my videos on YouTube and ask me, do I have any other treatment options? Because they've got a difficult case where they can't get it to stop growing back. So yeah, even though they're not, malignant, they can, for some patients, be problematic. I've seen them grow into the ear canal all the way down to the mastoid bone, not metastasizing, but still causing an annoying problem for that patient. So important to know about. I will throw this out there. I don't know if the literature supports this, but I think there's at least a published case report. But in case anyone's watching this or in case any of you encounter this, one of my fellows, Nick Love, last year told me that they had a case where a patient had angiolymphoid hyperplasia with the eosinophilia, epithelioid hemangioma, and the patient, I can't remember if they also had eczema or what it was, but they took the new targeted agent for Dupixent. I have no conflict of interest, I don't think, with that company. I don't even know who makes Dupixent. But Dupixent, what is it? Dupilumab? Is that the proper generic name?
Yes.
Okay, dupilumab. They took that and their ALHE totally regressed. So I'm not saying that I recommend that. I'm just saying investigate that and look into the literature. I think if I recall, it was a year or so ago, and I looked it up, and I think I did find one case report, but that was anecdotal from my fellow who during residency said he saw a case like that. And again, because these are problematic and people are seeking multiple different options to treat the problematic ones, you might have trouble getting it approved or covered by insurance, but wow, that would be amazing, right? To be able to have a biologic that helped get those under control. So at least just an extra thing to research if you happen to encounter this, and look at all the EOs there. And see that? It's like hard to see, it's a vascular lumen, but there is a little lumen right here with probably some fibrin and a red cell. Same thing here. It looks like a nest, but there's a lumen in here, kind of hiding. So ALHE, epithelioid hemangioma. It can be tricky.